Greetings and welcome to the episode today. It is Sunday, June the 6th, and today's episode is going to be on the topic of Lynyrd Skynyrd's album called God and Guns. And this is going to be one like I did yesterday, and it's going to be the same subject, mainly because, like 5150 Van Halen, or Van Halen in general for that matter, for the most part, really I just couldn't get into their stuff. And for this album, I could get into Lynyrd Skynyrd in general, but mainly, plane crash stuff. And then we're going to really delve into the album itself, God and Guns, is what it's going to be on. But anyway, we're going to get into that. I'm going to see the track listing on here, and to God and Guns, the title tracks in here, and then you have stuff like Still Unbroken, Simple Life, and also Gifted Hands. I think being the main ones on the album. There was a video made for Still Unbroken and Simple Life, and also Skinner Nation, which on YouTube here it's titled Almost Time for Simple Man Cruise V11, which is 7, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, besides the point, I say that way too much. Anyway, this is another one that I really could not get into before at all, and just like the other one, we did a review on this particular album, but it was after the podcast had turned into the DTM music podcast, and really it was Gerald on there with us too, and we just changed the name, but it's basically the same concept except with Gerald on there. But anyway, Gerald had picked this album to do, and I really had never heard it, much less knew anything about even this era of the band, or any era after the plane crash for that matter. And I really didn't like the idea of, Lynyrd Skynyrd at all being a thing, to tell you the truth. And but anyway, I'm starting to change my mind about that whole thing. And I'm not going to get too much into that because I'll start ranting and stuff. But anyway, if you want to know the details of that, then just go look it up and/or watch Civil War Skynyrd, and you'll get a pretty good laugh. But anyway, once again, I'm going to say it. That's besides the point. Now, the point of the episode is that this album actually I have come to like. And really, I mean, we joke about it a lot, and really, all jokes aside, I really do. I don't particularly love all the songs on the album, but some of them, a few of them, I'm not crazy about, but I can sort of, I can listen to them and not just absolutely hate it. But the rest of them, I can really listen to, and enjoy it. In particular, I've really started to like ones that I didn't like before, like Still Unbroken, Southern Way, Simple Life, and really the other ones. A few other ones I'd already kind of like Unwrite That Song, and That Ain't My America. I sort of like that one, mainly because of the subject matter. And also Gifted Hands. I liked those before, but now I've just started to like the couple of tracks that come before that. And then really, all the point of it is that just give stuff a chance, and you'll start liking it. And for whatever reason, that's just the way it is for me. I don't know about anybody else, but for me it is. And but anyway, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's an oddball album, but it's just the contrast of songs on just this particular album, and then also this compared to pre-plane crash Skynyrd. A lot of people. That's why a lot of people just don't like or won't listen to the present day Skynyrd and stuff. And when I say present day, I mean pretty much anything after the plane crash. That's what I'm meaning when I say that. That just because I can't think of any other way to describe it, to be honest with you. Anything 91 to now, pretty much, or actually 1987, because I've been really into a concert from 1987. But you can go check that out if you want a good show and a good example of what the band and the music would be shaped like from this era, from 87 on, with Ed King. And it seems like to me that Ed King really got better with the band, especially with the Skynyrd band and stuff, as time went on. Back in the day, he was good, but I've seen an interview with Ed King, and it seemed like that he claimed that the interviewer asked him something like, was there any competition, any ego problems for who gets the lead part, or who, all this, and who writes the songs, or such as that. And he claimed that there was none of that. But I kind of get the sense that there sort of was, to tell you the truth. And I'm not calling him a liar or anything, but it just seems like there kind of was. Maybe he didn't realize it, but I think there really was among the band members, because they split it up pretty evenly. But at the same time, it seems like they would just kind of cut Ed all the way out. It's like he was either all the way playing through a song, or the songs that he didn't have a lot to do with writing. He didn't write the riff and the song for. It's like he wouldn't have anything in it. Maybe a few little parts that you can make out. But then it's like they would just even cut him low in the mix or something, And really, and another thing too is what I don't understand them saying is all I've ever heard any of the band members say is, that he wasn't a good bass player, or either they say, like Bob Burns said that he liked him better as a guitar player, but he liked him as a bass player, but better as a guitar player. And I can sort of see that, but at the same time, I just don't understand why people say he was such a bad bass player. Because go listen to "Give Me Three Steps," and the bass is very high in the mix, and you can hear it very well, and it carries that song. I know Gary, it's a great song, and Gary plays some great lead stuff, but during the verses and stuff, he carries that song with that bass line. If you really listen and you just realize what you're listening to, that's Ed King on that whole first album called Pronounced. And really what the story was is that Ed King said that he was sharing a house with Ronnie Van Zant at the time, and he said that it was right after the recording of the first album, and he said, we're going to move you to guitar, and that you're the worst bass player that I've ever played with. And every time I hear that story, I just really I can't believe that, or it's either that or he's really played with some stellar bass players, is all I can say, which I don't really think that's the case, to be honest with you, because he started off, when the band started off and stuff, they were in different bands, some of them. It wasn't anything big. It was just like, garage band type stuff, and having little battle of the band competitions and local type stuff, and they were in different local bands and stuff, and really they were in different, and then they finally got together, but you just, if you don't know that story, just go look it up. I'm not really going to tell the whole thing, but with the whole Bob Burns hit in the head with a baseball or whatever, but you can go look that up if you hadn't heard it. There's lots and lots of documentaries out there that you can go check out. But anyway, I just really never have understood that. And not to say Ed King is not a good guitar player. He's a great guitar player, as he would tell you himself in the movie Uncivil War, Skynyrd. But anyway, that's just a little joke there. But anyway, that's besides the point. Really, he is really a great guitar player, as he said in there. And he doesn't strike me as an arrogant guy. It's just he has an air of self-confidence, I think, in himself, and I think Gary Rosington and all the rest of them do. but it seems like that Ed really just stands out when he, like, for example, Sweet Home. You take Sweet Home Alabama, and he just completely takes over that song. He is that song, and it's great all around, and all the instrumentationals. Is my fame, I like to say. Anyway, really, he just he does the first solo, then he solos throughout. Then Billy Powell comes in, and it fades out on the record version with that, and with the piano solo, and then, but you go to, like, for example, 1976. That whole part, I'm not really sure exactly how long it was. Between Ed King leaving and Steve Gaines coming in, but filling that role. But there was a show. There was a couple of shows, like on YouTube even, that you can find, and there was probably quite a bit of touring that it was just the two guitarists, Alan Collins and Gary Rossington, and really I like that sound of the band, and really I think that Alan Collins and Gary Rossington together, they don't have any bit of trying to compete with each other. I think they really just work well together as a team with the band, and really the band, anything outside of Ronnie Van Zant and the guitarist, it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference, to be honest. If one of them, like, for example, one time for one show, Billy Powell couldn't be there because he had a cut hand or something, and he couldn't do that one show. And throughout the whole show, he just like an old, he just adds another level to it. Like he kind of enhances the show, but it's not really, he doesn't have to be there for the Skynyrd sound to be Skynyrd. The Skynyrd sound really is those guitars, bottom line. And you can have whatever bassist you want to. The drummer matters a little bit more, but not as much as the guitarist. And then really, you can have a piano or you cannot have a piano, and it really doesn't matter, to be honest. Billy Powell is great, and he has a good element, but really that's not what adds that Skynyrd sound, that kind of dirty sound and southern, just what makes it southern rock. And really, it's not replicated. I haven't heard it replicated. I've heard some attempts, but it really didn't come out that well. It's almost it's a fine line cross between old style blues and old style rock, and a little bit of they talk about Ronnie Van Zant rather talks about Jimmy Rogers doing some of his songs and stuff, like T for Texas, and then doing Call Me the Breeze by J.J. Cale. I know it doesn't, like he said in the concert, we don't do it country, but that's what they're taking their influence from. And it doesn't really come out sounding any kind of country, but it's just that's what Ronnie Van Zant had in mind. That's probably what he grew up on, is stuff like that. And but really, Skynyrd, their primary sound is in those guitars. And so the point I'm really overall getting to is that third guitarist, besides Gary and Alan, really doesn't all the way. Really, Steve Gaines made a lot bigger difference back in the day than Ed King did, because they didn't really let Ed King do as much as he probably wanted to. If Ed King if they would have let Ed King, he probably would have wrote every song. He would have played all the lead and just took over it all, and it would have turned out just as good as it did. But really, for example, like in these songs, like Sweet Home Alabama, he just took over the whole thing and they just let him have it, because I think Ed King even said that the band wasn't even around. The whole band wasn't even there when they first recorded it. Like, it was a story like Gary was there, had got there with just his guitar, and he had played something. He played something else off of that, and that's how he wrote the Sweet Home Alabama riff. And but anyway, and he still plays that same part under it, which doesn't all the way fit, but that's besides the point. Really, what I'm trying to get to is Ed King. They didn't let him do as much as he wanted to, and after the plane crash, if you watch that 1987 tribute, well, it's not the whole tour video, but it's like that. I think that's what kind of started that tour or whatever, because Charlie Daniels came out and said it's the first time in 10 years, that they had played in public together. But anyway, it had been 10 years later, and Ed King, really, the three guitarists were Ed King, Gary Rossington, and the other one, I can't remember his name, to be honest. I'll look it up or something and tell you. Yeah, anyway, I can't remember. But the other, he was pretty good, though. He was like a rhythm guitarist. But he played some lead and stuff. But Ed King, that's besides the point. Ed King really completely took over that show. But if you watch the show, it's a show from '93, and it was after the album The Last Rebel came out, and it was from the Fox Theater, and it was a live show, and Ed King was in that too. But I think Gary really took over that show, because with the new material, you can really more hear on that last album, on that last Rebel album, on a couple of songs you can hear that you can just hear Ed King all over it, and on others and on all the rest of it, Gary Rossington just completely just took over it. That was pretty much his album, besides those few songs that Ed King completely, I could tell he came out with the whole song structure and the riff and everything and played the lead. But from other than that, Gary just completely took over that whole thing. And really, I think that I hadn't heard the whole album yet, but I've just seen those few songs just from that video. And really, I think that was a pretty good show. And I like the songs, like, for example, Get Out of Hell and My Dodge. I can just see Ed King just written all over that song. Just the rhythm part, the way it's structured. It's like he has like a lot of funk influence. Like kind of a book like a boogie type thing. I know it might not make sense, but like in an interview, I heard a guy say that, and it made a lot of sense. Like with the rhythm stuff, he has a way of playing rhythm guitar that's very unique. And to get back to the main subject of this video, God and Guns, this album, I can't remember what year it's from, maybe 2010-ish, I'm not really sure. But I think I've heard Devin say that before. But anyway, it's grown on me. I really like the album. And obviously it's after, I was going to say, no, Ed King died recently, I think. So I think he was still alive at this time, but I don't think he was with the band, because I think he died in like 2018 or something, but this album was like 2010-ish, so he was still alive. He just didn't have anything to do with the band, which I think was a big mistake, to be quite honest with you. And but anyway, really, I just the whole Ed King thing, I guess I made my point about that. Well, what I'm trying to get to ultimately is that God and Guns, the way this band set up is still the way it is now for when they're doing this farewell, tour now, and the way the band is still set up, basically, I don't know if it's the same drummer and bassist or whatnot, but basically it's the same band because it has Johnny Van Zant, it has Ricky Medlock, the guy they call Sparky on guitar. I can't remember his real name. And then they have, obviously Gary Rosington still there, and he can still play really well. Honestly, I didn't know if he could or not before, but really he can. And it proves on this album. On this particular album, really, Gary is another one where he was heavily, he had a big influence on this album. And this is one I think that they didn't really write maybe so much for. They did, but then again, they kind of went out and got songwriters, for it, and they might have revised it some, but they really, it's one of those type of things like these country singers do. Like they'll do a whole album of just songs that people have written, that songwriters have written, and they're just, their own tapes that are just sitting, waiting to be picked up and just done. And really, I'm not a huge fan of that idea, to be honest. I think it's a bunch of baloney, and really, I don't like it because it's like they're not even, all they're doing. Like for example, like if a country singer, I'm not going to name one in particular, but like if he comes out with a new album, and then, the name of the name on the album is going to be that country singer's name, and then you're gonna, they don't actually even play guitar or anything on the album. All they actually do is sing, and that's all. So then they probably make the biggest money off of it. Not the musicians; they themselves make the biggest money. They didn't write anything off the album. They just picked. They got with some producers, just picked 10 songs, that songwriters have written, from out there in Nashville or whatever, and just decided, okay, we're going to record this, and just hired a band and just went to the studio, and all they did was just sing the songs, and the band played, and they didn't even make as much money. I'm not a big fan of that at all. I think it's stupid, and it's a good example of, it's just not, I don't know. It's not great character for, really to just do that, and they make the most money off of it. And all they do is sing the songs that they don't even write. They make the most money off of it. So, anyway, if that makes any sense, I mean, I know it sounds like I'm griping, and I kind of am, but really, and it's to a certain extent, that's what this album was. God and Guns, it was kind of that, to be honest with you. Except for the band was, the whole band probably made a good share of it. They weren't just session musicians from Nashville or something. They were actually, it was a band together, and they all probably made a good fair share of the profit from this album. And I'm not really sure how it even did, to be honest. But there were videos made, so it must have been pretty good. Did all right. But anyway, really what I'm trying to get to is the album it's grown on me, and it's pretty good. And it's very diverse and very different from before. And the album itself has some different things. Like Unwrite That Song is way, it's like a country song. That basically is like, that would match today's country, really, and that's what it is. Bottom line, it has a rock sound to it because it's Lynyrd Skynyrd playing it, but it's a country song. And then you've got stuff like Gifted Hands, which has got, I mean, that's the song on this album that really sounds like something that could have been from the 70s. To be honest with you, that's the one that really stands out to me. That, that's the one that most sounds like Lynyrd Skynyrd at its core. It sounds like something Ronnie Van Zant might even write. Not all the way, but just, it probably not, but it's closest to that. But anyway, so really, I think they should have had Ed King. Bottom line, they should have got him on and they didn't, and because they had the band set up of Ricky Medlock and Sparky, and don't get me wrong, they are all great guitar players and great. It's a great band still, but it's just kind of all over the place. The album is very all over the place, and it just doesn't complement itself in that way. You know, it kind of, you know, older Skynyrd albums, you know, back from the 70s, they kind of followed a pattern for the whole album, and that formula worked. And this formula now is not working, and I'll tell you why. Because they didn't write as much for this album. They just took and chose from songwriters out there. They might have wrote with them, but at the same time, they just brought them in from somewhere, and didn't even pay no mind to thinking, well, maybe we should try to make it sound similar. It's not going to sound similar when you have so many different songwriters for different songs, because they're different people with different styles of songwriting. And I just don't know. But anyway, that was a little reference there, but that's besides the point. Man, I just really don't know. That's something Devin would say, but anyway, I'm going to go back to the main thing before I get too distracted. The album was all over the place, and it shouldn't have been, and God and Guns was pretty good still, though. Somehow it still managed to be pretty good, but whatever. It wasn't the greatest. I'll say that. But I do like the fact that they bring up God in it. I like that. And because a lot of people don't do that, and they didn't even do that as much back in the day, but Ronnie did some with his songwriting. And the bottom line is the reason the albums in the 70s sounded the same was because they were written by the same people. You know, one of the guitarists would come up with a riff, and then Ronnie Van Zant would come up with the lyrics, and guess what? You've got yourself a whole album that has the same sound to it, because it's the same people. So I guess I made my point. And I know we've already done a review of God and Guns, but you can go listen to that if you want some more detail and me just acting a fool and not really analyzing anything, just, you know, making stupid, immature jokes, but Devin analyzing more. You can go hear that, Devin analyzing it, and Gerald as well with his opinions and stuff. And I'm really glad that they still doing stuff. But like Ed King said, you know, they asked him about it in this interview, and he said, well, you know, I'm really glad that the band is still going and they're still able to play, and as long as they're still able to play, then go on, you know. And the reporter said, oh, really? And then Ed King said, no. So that tells you what Ed King thinks about it. But, and that's pretty much probably why he wasn't a part of this album, God and Guns. But anyway, I would have really liked him to be just kind of even if he was just a special guest on the album, that would have been better. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. And I'm just going to wrap it up now. And really, I really enjoyed this, and I'm going to try to keep them going. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it, whoever's listening, if anyone is out there. And at the end of this episode, after I get through talking here, I'm going to have some snippets of an episode, and a couple of episodes maybe even. Probably just one that hadn't been released, and probably is not going to be released. But I hope you enjoy that. And there's just going to be a little compilation of some things in a certain order that might come out kind of interesting. So anyway, thanks for watching or listening, however you want to say it. And hope you enjoyed. So there's for today. All right. So see you next time. Artemis threw stuff at people and almost hit Dale. Hit Gary.
Threw his drums all over and almost hit Dale and hit me with some stuff. So
how have you said this in the same breath?
In the same breath.
So I've just never got that I've never got the phone call. We had to be friends before we play the music.
Gee, I guess I haven't gotten a phone call yet. But I guess you got to be friends first, you know.
You deserve a tail whooping.
No, he deserves an ass whipping for that, and he may get one.